We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Andrew back on Liberty Nation Radio. I remain Mark Angelides, and we continue to be joined by Liberty Nation's economics editor, Andrew Moran. So, Andrew, we've been talking about tariffs in the first segment there. And I want to continue with that for a little while if we could. So, Donald Trump has reports being made up by his people to determine what kind of, balance sheet impacts will happen. And that's due on April 1st. What do we expect to see in that?
Okay, so there's a few different reports that are being produced by the Commerce, by Treasury, by the U.S. Trade Representative, and a couple of other administration officials. And the one report is talking about the fiscal impact of tariffs, how much revenue would they generate. Another report is a pretty comprehensive overview of U.S. trade relationships with the rest of the world. They determine, what the tariff rates are, what the trade deficit is, what levies, what goods and services are being exchanged at an imbalance or balanced rate, perhaps. So so I'm looking forward to April Fool's Day to look at these numbers, because it will determine whether the United States is a fool or if it's on level.
Yeah, well, what's the opposite of that, right? A savvy pricer, So let's if we consider that the tariffs that obviously they've been held back, many of them, except as you point out the China one. How is the rest of the world reacting to the coming imposition of these tariffs? What are they doing to shore up either their government coffer supplies or to protect consumers, which I'm actually not sure they are doing anything. They are not planning anything to protect consumers directly, because that would just it involves some massive central planning things. Well, what's happening?
Well, I would say, first of all, on protecting consumers, there's not much really you can do.
Yeah.
A lot of economists I speak to, they always say, there's divided by saying, okay, yeah, tariffs are inflationary and they're going to raise the aggregate inflation level by about 0.8 percentage points. Others say, tariffs are not inflationary, or if they're a one-time price increase. But anyway, so now how the rest of the world is responding. Canada, they're up in arms, especially when it comes to steel aluminum tariffs, because they're the number one exporter to the United States when it comes to steel. 60% of U.S. imports of steel come from Canada, with I think Quebec about 60% of that overall figure. Europe is up in arms. What's her name? Ursula von der Leyen. She was saying, okay, we're going to have countermeasures. We're going to retaliate. China, who's just always complaining about any reciprocal tariffs.
Sorry to interrupt there. When Ursula von der Leyen, she's the president, one of the many presidents that they have in the European Union. When she says we're going to retaliate, how? That's my question. So if we're looking at President Trump is going to put reciprocal tariffs, so it's a dollar for dollar reciprocity. When she says we're going to retaliate, what, by upping the tariffs? Then I don't understand how the retaliation come in.
Okay, so I think that her first response had to do more with the steel and aluminum tariffs,
right,
the 25%. I think when it comes to reciprocal tariffs, her beef is going to be mostly about the value-added tax, because there's so much disagreement about the VAT, of how it's not necessarily a tariff and everyone has to pay it, whether you're a European or American automobile manufacturer. And so the administration, they think that value-added taxes triple tariff rates in Europe, which they deem, of course, not fair. So if they were, let's say, raise tariffs to 30%, then the European Union is going to say, okay, well, that's not right. So we're going to start raising everything now to 30%, whatever the case. So, so that thing, when it comes to Europe specifically, that's the most impacted region, I think, for these reciprocal tariffs, mainly due to the value-added taxes.
So let's talk about value-added tax, VAT. It's all my life I've grown up hearing, hey, but you got to add the VAT onto that. And it's the most, I've always seen it, and I might be wrong on this, but I've always seen and felt it viscerally that it's the most pernicious of all taxes, because, it was, and I'm not sure that the current situation, but it was that, well, it's only on like high value items that you don't need. That was the point of the value-added tax. It was on things that you don't necessarily have to survive. But that seems to have gone by the wayside, and now it's just an extra tax.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. I was looking at some of the numbers when I was composing my article, and I saw that, okay, so first, the value-added tax represents about 18% of European GDP.
Yeah.
And then the next number is that the value-added tax is about 20% of revenue for European countries. So I think, I may be wrong because I don't have any experience in value-added taxes, but it seems as if one of those, regressive things whereby, okay, it's going to start impacting first luxury goods, and then over time, to collect more revenues for these revenue-starved governments, they started transferring it to absolutely everything under the sun. Am I correct in that supposition?
Yes, that's exactly right. The UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and his government have decided to apply VAT to private school fees. Now, many people might say, why on earth do you need to send your children to private schools? Well, let me tell you, the public school system, really, you don't want to go there. But here's the thing. What's happening is they've created this impression that the only people who go to private schools are the children of the uber wealthy.
Yeah.
They haven't taken into consideration that these are families that it's difficult to make ends meet to pay the school fees that they do. With an extra 20%, what they're finding is that they're going to need an extra 40,000 school places in the UK because people can't afford to pay an extra 20% on top of what they're already paying. And so it's created this massive crisis of there aren't places to send kids to school, which, my personal opinion, I think this is a good thing. Get with the homeschooling programs, right? When you see this VAT being expanded, as you say, to everything because it's a great revenue builder for the government, surely that's far more damaging to the individual consumer than reciprocal tariffs would be.
I think we've got off onto a completely different topic. I was thinking on the issue of tariffs and the value-added taxes. There's some disagreement among economists of whether it really impacts trade between, let's say, just Europe and the United States. Because there's one report by the Tax Foundation, Erica York, she's a senior economist there, a couple of other economists, and they say that value-added taxes, it's trade neutral, whereby if the United States ships it, let's say it ships a Ford car to Europe, or Germany builds a BMW, they're both going to pay the exact same value-added taxes. There's no benefit, there's no advantage that Europe is getting over the United States based on the value-added taxes. But the administration ostensibly disagrees. As I said earlier, they think it raises tariffs to as much as 30% because the average VAT in Europe is 21.8%. You have the 10% on top of that for the tariffs. I think that really hurts the United States on the trade front.
Well, so in the US they have an added sales tax, which is between 3 and 11%. Is that? Yeah.
So that's the thing. They say the Tax Foundation economists, they say that actually the sales tax is far more harmful to trade than the value added taxes because Howard Lutnick, he says that that's our export subsidies for Europe, and that's how they get the benefit for it. But the sales tax, it's hard to you don't get a rebate for it. So if you ship a car to the United States, some car dealer buys it, they have to pay that sales tax in the state regardless of that. But in Europe, ostensibly, they have rebates for it. And therefore, also, the other argument made by the Tax Foundation is that the country that imports the good with the value-added tax, their currency appreciates more. Therefore, it's easier to purchase the exports of U.S. goods. But overall, if you look at the European exchange rate to the U.S. dollar, it's hard to see that in real time. But that's the crux of the open discussion.
Andrew, thanks for the education. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.